We'd like to start by acknowledging the original owners of the land and their leaders, past, present, and emerging. Ladies and gentlemen, India and Australia are two great democracies. They are united by cricket, by curries, by being members of the Commonwealth, and more. Let's get some insights on what we're going to have and what are going to be the proceedings for today. And what we're going to do is start with inviting Akshay Kumar, the chairman of the India Club, a 20-year-old institution. Akshay, could you come and say a few words, please? Thank you.
Microphone okay? Good afternoon. I greet you all participants to the India Club Snack and Chat session, organized by three prominent organizations in this prestigious, fabulous venue. Australia, particularly Sydney, attracts so many around the globe. I got initiated through my father, who was involved in Rotary Club. I landed in Australia 51 years ago, earned my PhD on computer applications in minerals exploration from the University of New South Wales. Subsequently, I worked on iron and coal exploration, affected by an enigmatic saying, geologists drive taxis every 7 years. With typical Australian mineral boom and bus cycle, I shifted and enjoyed corporate jobs in Transfield, EDS, HP. Well, the present mineral boom happens to be an exception. It's just going on. Australia is a land of opportunity, which rewards hard, intelligent work. We settled in this beautiful country with our two sons. Our younger son, Dr. Varat Kumar, psychiatrist in Sydney, is present here. My family values urge me to give back to the society, an act of karma. In India, I had headed union-like associations at workplace. To empower women, I persuaded and pushed Shubha to the forefront. Who better to bear the brunt than my wife? Having experienced unique idiosyncrasies in local associations, we created India Club, an organization operating with utmost integrity and honesty. Having started small with our own humble resources, the club took off very well, benefiting by Shubha's genuine, polite approach of connecting with people. Over the last 3 decades, we have successfully conducted many communities' welfare projects. My foray has been to design and execute projects, though I stay in the background, and that is by choice. We have been trendsetters, deriving contentment in seeing many followers, serving the society for betterment of all. We sincerely thank our loyal friends, contributors, members, and supporters. The theme of today, India-Australia friendship, will reverberate here over the next hour. India, the fastest growing major economy, is on track soon to be the 3rd largest. The biggest democracy in the world has just completed elections conducted so well and peacefully, in which 652 million voters voted, of which 312 million are women. I think you all would like to join us in congratulating Prime Minister Modi on winning his 3rd term. And what better time and venue to make this announcement. long flourish India-Australia friendships, cooperation, and relationships. Following parliamentary practice, I yield my place.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Akshay Kumar, the chairman of the India Club. I'd now like to call on Shubha Kumar, the president of the India Club, and Akshay's wife. And she's going to say a few words.
Thanks, Rajiv. Good afternoon and very warm welcome to you all in India Club family. This event and warm welcome to you all from India Club, from Indo-Australia Sanatan Society and Community Foundation of Northwestern Sydney. I am taking this opportunity to share with you what India Club stands for and highlight some of its initiatives. Our strength is our members from highly professional and business background. We stand for multicultural, bringing diverse communities together, enhancing inclusivity, social cohesion, harmony, and goodwill. Trust, honesty, integrity, transparency, and goodwill are some of the core values of an organization to serve the community. With this sense, my husband, Dr. Akshay Kumar, and I co-founded India Club. We regularly host a variety of functions, cultural and community events, and support our members, other organizations with similar thinking, and the community in advancing their journey. I acknowledge our India Club collaboration with two exceptional community organizations in Sydney and their remarkable presidents, Yogesh Khattar, Yogesh is President of Indo-Australia Sanatan Society, and Rajiv Chaudhary, President of Community Foundation of Northwestern Sydney. Together, we are a force to reckon with. We would love to see them both in Parliament, New South Wales or federal, with a passion to make Australia shine. Now I'll share some initiatives that we have taken. We are the pioneers of Grand Diwali celebration in Sydney with amazing multicultural flair. Illumination of Sydney Opera House on Diwali festival. Akshay and myself initiated the process, persistently campaigned, and with the help from many, it became a reality in 2014, which happens every year now. It is time for you, Mr. Warren Kirby, to take it to the next level. Our team is happy to share with you innovative ideas. We took pivotal role during COVID and started Snack and Chat via Zoom to beat the isolation and loneliness. Snack and Chat is now a popular monthly program, totally free of charge, conducted in function halls. India Club's inaugural Science and Technology exhibition for children from 4-year-old to high school children was highly appreciated by the community and especially from the children, especially the very young ones. India Club's inaugural voice referendum, yes or no. We are the one presented both sides, led by eminent speakers. Yes by Dr. Andrew Charlton, MP, and no by former Minister Alex Hawke to educate our community. our submission to the New South Wales Ministerial Task Force on issues of overseas Indian students used by our then MP in Parliament. ICDV Forum asked for help, initiated by then Commander of the Hills PAC in 2011, has progressed via India Club programs, the first step, breaking barriers, sparking the change, and snack and chat. We have now taken on board the community's cherished dream of a unique India Center. We are hopeful, again, Mr. Warren, Kirby, that with your guidance and advice, this dream becomes a reality. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubha Kumar. And Warren, member for Riverstone, Warren Kirby, could you please stand up, please? This event today is kind courtesy of this lovely man, a young member of Parliament who's got a dream. And I think a part of his dream aligns with us. And we want to see people like Warren really shine, because this wouldn't have been possible without Warren's inputs, without his support, and the lovely Sue Lawrence. Sue, can you stand up and turn around, please? Ladies and gentlemen, thanks, Warren. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to now start by acknowledging some of the people present here. We will have the Honorary Premier Chris Minns here very shortly. He's probably engaged and will be here at some stage. We'll pause and get to the proceedings, get him to say a few words, but we'll continue with the proceedings. So you will see Premier Chris Minns sometime during this afternoon. We've also got Warren Kirby, the member for Riverstone, here on the panel. We've also got the great Professor Tim Harcourt. He's the airport economist, and he comes with years of experience. And ladies and gentlemen, not just Warren, not just Tim, but all of the speakers here tonight, and all of you here are people who I've known for a minimum of 5 to 10 years. And I really am humbled to see each one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we speak, we've got the Premier for New South Wales, the Honorary Chris Minns in. Sir, could you please come up and sit down? Thank you, Premier Minns, for taking time off your busy schedule and attending this little afternoon. My other guest, Simon Taufel, everybody knows him. He's a legend. On the other side of the cricket field, he's a legendary umpire, renowned 6-time award-winning ICC umpire, who now conducts a lot of sessions on leaderships around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for him. I'd like to call on Yogesh Khattar, the president of the Indo-Australian Sanatan Society, to do a traditional welcome, the Indian way.
सबको सादर नमस्ते. Let me begin with the reciting of Gayatri Mantra, the most powerful mantra from the oldest book we have, the Rig Veda. So let me recite. Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Oh. So, Honorable Premier, Honorable Member of Parliament, and distinguished guests, today I want to shine a light on an incredible organization doing vital work in the community, the Indo-Australia Sanatan Society. Ours is a non-for-profit organization, is a beacon of support for international students, new migrants, and visitors, including our valued seniors. We extend a helping hand to those navigating a new life in Australia, fostering a sense of belonging and connection. But the Indo-Australia Sanatan Society goes beyond just practical support. They are deeply committed to environmental responsibilities through yajnas, agnihotras, and ancient fire rituals, promoting a spiritual connection to nature and call to action for its protection. However, the core mission can be summed up in three beautiful words: seva, sacrifice, and love. These principles guide our every action, creating a vibrant and inclusive community. Now, I just want to make very clear, the Indo-Australia Sanatan Society is a non-political organization. However, that doesn't mean we don't understand the importance of civic engagement. We actively work with friends across the political spectrum, from Blacktown to Parramatta, from Liverpool to Leppington. This collaboration with federal and state government officials allow us to better serve the needs of our community. Our dedication extends beyond our organization. We partner with India Club and the Community Foundation of Northwestern Sydney. Together, we create a powerful network, working tirelessly to ensure everyone has the opportunity to live peacefully and connect culturally. The Indo-Australia Sanatan Society exemplifies the very best of our community spirit. We bridge cultures, promote environmental awareness, and foster a sense of belonging. But our impact goes even further by fostering a strong and vibrant Indian-Australian community. We play a vital role in strengthening the relationship between our two nations. Imagine a future where cultural exchange is effortless, where environmental concerns are addressed collaboratively, and where the bonds of friendship between India and Australia are even stronger. The Indo-Australia Sanatan Society is actively building their future, one act of service at a time. Let us all learn from this model of service and collaboration. Let us support each other's efforts, and together let us build a stronger India-Australia relationship for the benefit of all. Jai Hind, Namaste, Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you, Yogesh. That was wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Chris Minns, the Honourable Premier, we're just going to do another reintroduction so he knows who's sitting around him. We've got, obviously, Premier, we've got Warren Kirby, one of your members for Riverstone, who's been the architect and who's really assisted us today in making this happen. We had a chat around Holi, Premier, with the Honourable Warren Kirby, and he said to us that he was pretty excited about his trip that he'd made to India. And that got us talking, and that got us excited. And lo and behold, thanks to Sue Lawrence and our stakeholders, there's the president of the India Club, Shubha Kumar, the chairman of the India Club, Akshay Kumar. We've also got with us a few distinguished guests, and they're panelists today. We've got Professor Tim Harcourt, the airport economist, famously known for walking around the world on airports, visiting countries and talking about economies around the world with his Akubra hat. I don't know if he gets paid for that, but we've also got the legendary Simon Taufel. He's obviously known to many in the cricketing world. He's a famous umpire, award-winning, and a dear friend. Simon, thank you for coming today. We've also got members for Liverpool. We've got the member for Mount Druitt. We've got the Honourable Mayor from the Hills Shire, Peter Gangemi, thank you for coming. We've got people. We've got Nalika here from the Sri Lankan Australian Society. We've got a budding filmmaker. We've got Gitesh, who's done some work with Austrade in Queensland. We've got a renowned psychiatrist. We've got Hawkesbury Helping Hands, one of those wonderful charities that work tirelessly to support the community. We've got the lovely lady from the Baha'i community here, Carmen, put your hand up, for the wonderful work you do with various communities. And of course, each one of you here today are important to us. Premier, myself, I am the president of the Community Foundation of Northwestern Sydney. I work principally, we're not going to talk too much about what I do, but my foundation works with bridging the gaps. And we have fortunately, prior to Warren becoming a member of Parliament, Sue, Warren and myself have worked and known each other for years. And I've really appreciated my work with them, but we've worked in bridging those gaps that social security platforms or the government or organizations cannot provide with. We also work in the domestic violence space. I'm going to play a little video to give you a little idea as to what we do. Premier, this is a little Indo-Australian joint venture that we're working on, and we're in the process of collaborating with India, with Bollywood and Australia. We want to showcase domestic violence and use the cinematic platform to spread this message around the world.
About my life, what do I say? Except I wish I had the strength, the courage to be the master of my own destiny. If only I could make sense of my perfectly imperfect world. If only. There are always two sides to a story. The human and the inhuman. It's time to stand up. It's time to fight back.
Not going to speak too much more after this. We've got a blind girl who's written the songs for this movie. Premier, we'll be going around and we hope that sometime towards the later half of this year, we would commence shooting for this, and we will involve, or we would love to talk to you and give you more insights and see how we can engage with you on this. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd now like the Premier, Chris Minns, to say a few words.
Thank you. Thanks, mate.
You're welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, everyone. What a privilege to be here. Thank you so much to Mr. President and Madam President and Mr. Chair and Simon and Tim. Of course, my colleague Warren Kirby, who invited me along today and made sure I was here. He said it was very important that I come. to launch this discussion, one of the most important conversations that we can have about the future of our economy. And I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues Chari and Edmond, who are here, interested in this issue, passionate about India-Australia relations, and a good friends of Warren as well. It's great to see Sue as well, and nice to see you, Mr. Mayor. How are you? Look, I don't have a long speech, but it's my important duty to acknowledge that this is taking place and to, I guess, officially open the conversation. Yesterday, we saw the biggest exercise in democracy ever recorded in India, which marks it as the biggest exercise in democracy of any country at any point in the history of the world. And you have to say it's you, Indian Australians, who are connecting our country to this massive democracy and the world's fastest growing economy. Soon, India will be the third largest economy in the world, and that massively growing middle class, with that purchasing power, that projection, that economic growth, those opportunities will only increase in the years ahead. India is currently our 11th largest trading partner, but I anticipate, and in fact I expect, that number to rise up the ranks in the years ahead. That means more trade, more investment, more cooperation, and crucially, more connections. We're well placed for that to take place, however. In the last census, India overtook both China and New Zealand to become our third most popular country of birth, behind Australia and England. Now, if you think about it, that leaves us with a huge competitive advantage because we have hundreds of thousands of people with family, language, and cultural connections to this fast-growing economy. This massive democracy, by any estimation, is on the move. Can I also say that this is an opportunity to acknowledge and recognise the Indian-Australian community right here in New South Wales, which is undeniably one of the great success stories of modern Australian multiculturalism. Indian Australians, if I can speak in generalities, but I think it's beyond contradiction, are respected and known as incredibly hardworking and passionate Australians. And we're very, very lucky that a wave of generation of Indian Australians have chosen to call this country home. They've added to the wonder and the opportunity of Australia. Indian Australians have built homes, started businesses, excelled in education, established places of worship. You are, without a doubt, the energy, the driver of our economic growth, particularly in Western Sydney and particularly in northwestern Sydney. So I think if I can, as a scene setter, say, the future is in our hands, but it's our opportunity to grab it. That's all we have to do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam President. Thanks, Warren. Good to see you.
Shubha, would like you to give that to Chris Minns, please. Just littles.
Oh, thank you. Excellent. Oh, what do you want to stand over here?
Oh,
Come in.
I think you should come in.
Oh, should we stand in the middle?
Yeah, let's just do one with. Go on, Shubha. Warren, please come in. Tim, please come in. Simon, can we have you too, please?
Please, sure.
Just
Make sure you're not in the projector.
Does that work? You come on this side. Should we just
you guys come in.
Simon.
Simon's been projected on. If I can come on this side. Both of you are being projected on. Come on this side. Do we want to just go this corner then? Just go on this corner so that nobody's. Come, let's do it on this. Sorry, Premier. Sorry. Watch us. Get that away. Got my rims on too. It's good.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Shiva. How are you? Oh, hello. What's
Your enthusiasm.
Take it.
okay. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy Parliament.
Thank you, Premier.
See you, Tim. See you, Tom. Nice to see you, mate.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Very, very welcome.
Thank you, sir.
See you soon. See you, Mr. Mayor. All right, get out of your hair. See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Janki Raman, the Consul General of India, was to attend today and come in, but due to the elections, until the new government and the new Prime Minister is announced, I think probably he doesn't want to make any public visits, and he doesn't want to be speaking about policy or anything. So in view of that, most likely, he has politely early this morning had to decline attending and participating with us today. But don't worry, we've got enough people here, including myself, who can take on that topic. But without further ado, we're going to go to the first speaker. The first speaker, a very eminent person, Professor Tim Harcourt. I'm just going to play this little video.
Welcome to the hustle and bustle of Jakarta.
Welcome to Shanghai.
Welcome to Tokyo. Dreaming of doing business in Shanghai, Tokyo or Hong Kong? Well, let's make it a reality. I'm Tim Harcourt, the Airport Economist, and I'm going to show you how to do business in this amazing country. Each week, we'll travel to an exciting new market to find out how business is done, learn from companies that have successfully entered the market, and discover the local culture. Check in with the Airport Economist Friday night on the Sky News Business Channel.
I'm just going to get your slides up. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Tim Harcourt, a professor from University of Technology, Sydney, a renowned economist, speaks a lot around the world. He's just come back from India a couple of weeks ago. He's also is it 3 to 5 years, he does a little series on India. His last series on India is on the web. You must Google it on YouTube and find it and have a listen. It's really interesting. He gives you good insights in his own unique way. Professor Tim Harcourt.
Thanks very much, everyone. Great to be here. In this room, there's a great example of immigration to Australia and the economic benefits we get and the social benefits we get from all of you. My ancestry is not 21st century immigration, it's 19th century. My ancestors came from Transylvania, and you probably think Transylvania, Dracula, economists, bloodsucker, it all makes sense. And they had a boat around New South Wales called the Wandering Jew that went to different ports and different country towns in New South Wales. That was their business. They were sort of original exporters. And my grandfather's name was Harkowitz, and he was training to be a rabbi, but he was an atheist, so it wasn't going so well. And he wanted to be a Bondi lifesaver at the Icebergs Club. And he couldn't get in as Harkowitz, so he changed it to Harcourt, which is my name now. And I used to complain a bit because Harkowitz sounds like a Nobel Prize winner in economics, because there was a Markowitz, it's sort of close. And he said, well, I didn't change the name, I just left the Goldbergs and joined the Icebergs. So that's how we ended up as Harcourt. So this is 19th century globalisation. In my world now, it's 21st century globalisation, which is not by paddle steamer, but by plane. And I think I went to 60 countries in 6 years before the pandemic, and it basically reflected the global economy. You can see this graph. You can see that in the 19th century, when the Wandering Jew was doing its thing around the riverways, trade was quite flat. But now we've seen this huge exponential rise of international trade that we've all taken part in. I'm going to talk a bit about the global economy and why Australia's been lucky, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Australia and India and why that is even more lucky. I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, Indonesia with Frida Linguini, in Thailand with Dr. Rungtip, she's the head of TV3, not a Master of Economics but a Master Chef in Malaysia. I spent a lot of time in Japan. Japan, very important to Australia. Blackjack McEwen signed the trade agreement in 1957 that got Australia into Asia. Korea, this is Seoul in the 1960s during the Korean War. That's Seoul now. Incredible story of economic development. We are soulmates with South Korea. We have a free trade agreement, and I have a few soulmates that look after me when I go to Korea. Mongolia I go to, Genghis Khan, known as Chinggis Khan, he invented free trade, they tell me. I go to Kazakhstan, known for Borat. In fact, I went to London and met Sacha Baron Cohen, who plays the dictator in that movie, and I said, I'm going to Kazakhstan next week, and he said, say hello to my friend Borat, he is a journalist there. And when I did go to Kazakhstan, the other speaker was Tony Blair, and I explained to him the story, and he said, what a funny job you have. You go all the way to London to meet Borat, and all the way to Kazakhstan to meet Tony Blair, which I guess he's right. We did a Middle East special in Israel, Tim Tams to Tel Aviv. We did a special on South Africa. I used to work for Nelson Mandela when he first came to power in South Africa, and he said, don't forget Africa. So I didn't. There I am with Tansy Coetzee, Miss Universe, talking about foreign direct investment in South Africa. By accident, there was a sporting event on too, so the World Cup for soccer, so I did my bit as an economist there too. And also we did a Brexit special, but we have to keep updating it as it changes prime ministers. And in South America, we did Alpaconomics, Red Hot Chili, peppers the world with free trade agreements. Don't buy from me, Argentina, and blame it on Rio. Well, this was great fun, but of course, then we had the pandemic and we had to stop for a while. We saw a dip in the global economy. We saw trade slowing down, although that happened before the pandemic, and a sort of slowbalisation rather than globalisation. And Australia being lucky, mining and agriculture still being very strong. We've gone from the mining boom to the dining boom, and we've had the benefit of world events actually helping our agricultural sector. We've also been lucky because we have our relationship with India. For many years, particularly before the pandemic, people talked about China and India being important to Australia and also being emerging economic superpowers. But as we know, we go back to economic history to when Moses was in short pants. India and China were very important in the global economy. So it's re-emerging. It's not an emerging superpower, it's a re-emerging economic superpower. We increasingly look to India in its own right, not just coupled together with China. The IMF sees Asia as where most of the growth has been, and this year and last year, India was leading the way, India and Southeast Asia. We've also had the strength of the bilateral relationship, Modi mania or Albomentum, and we see now that Prime Minister Modi is back elected with a reduced majority, and then Prime Minister Albanese to go later this year or next year. We've been, in many ways, a new dawn for India and Australia relationships in terms of trade, in terms of investment and partnerships. In the Airport Economist Mumbai episode, we did the partnership between Infosys and Telstra, where the Telstra executive was Indian origin and the Infosys executive was Australian origin. It was quite an interesting partnership. We've seen the growth of infrastructure, particularly with the Smart Cities program that we're looking at in the Airport Economist show. We've also got the two Ds, demography and democracy. We saw, as the Premier said, that amazing election that we've just had in terms of a billion people voting, but also demography. If you look at China again and India, you can see China an ageing population, India with a very young, promising population. They say China getting old before it gets rich, while India a very young, promising population. This has driven the growth of international education where I work, and you can see even with the dip in the pandemic, international students on the growth path, particularly from our Indian community with the visa changes. And that's part and parcel with this wonderful rise in immigration we've had from India and South Asia in general. And I think you can see the entrepreneurial talent of Indians contributing so much to the economy in Australia, including not only Tesch and Sanjeev and a few people in this room, but Sonia Sadiq Gandhi and my mate Anu from Bollywood Down Under making a huge contribution as Indian Australians. They're also Australia Day ambassadors, given that we share January 26 as our national days. There's also geopolitics, with India playing a very important role in the region, with the Quad and with the other various bodies around the region. We've also got emerging industries, the renewable sector that we're looking at in the program, and also space being very important for India and Australian cooperation. Later this year, I'll be going to Bengaluru to do an Airport Economist episode. I did the first one on Mumbai, and also to Chennai, so we'll be enjoying that in the program. And lastly, I don't underestimate cricket diplomacy, and Simon will talk about that and amongst other things. I spent a lot of time in India interviewing Adam Gilchrist when he was in Mumbai, and more recently UTS had a cricket collaboration and Commonwealth conference in New Delhi, where we had Matthew Hayden and Lisa Stelica as our guest speakers, and we did it in the middle of the IPL last year, and UTS I think had the most media coverage of any university in India, at least for that week, so that worked out very well for us, and we'll be taking that forward in the next Airport Economist episode. So that's it from me. It's a great pleasure to be here. I hope you can take a look at the Airport Economist when you have time on India and other countries in the world, and I look forward to contributing to the panel and the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tim Harcourt. Very enlightening. I'd like to acknowledge the Honorary Steve Kamper, MP, Member for Rockdale, Minister for Multiculturalism and Small Business. Lots of small businesses here, sir. Lots of multicultural people. So could you please stand up, just so the people... Thank you for taking time to be here. My next speaker is the wonderful Warren Kirby, Member for Riverstone, someone from Western Sydney, a young Member of Parliament and a dear friend. He's going to say a few words.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to come here today. I want to make a special shout out to Akshay and to also to Shubha and Rajiv and Yogesh for having the very first India Club here in Australia's very first Parliament. This is quite a special room. If you take the time to look at the ceiling there, it talks about the value of knowledge, and that is what we're here for today. This is quite a momentous time to be having this event. As it's been mentioned earlier, the re-election of Prime Minister Modi has demonstrated a few things. It's demonstrated both the vision and the trajectory of the Indian government, and it's also shown that democracy is indeed alive and well in the world's largest economy. There was a lot of talk earlier about how there was stacking and prevention, and that India was in danger of heading into an autocracy, and this most recent election has proven that that's fundamentally not true. The world's largest economy is alive and well. Of course, I recognise the Minister for Multiculturalism, who has taken the time to come here and meet us today, as well as Stephen Bali, Member for Blacktown, Edmond Atalla, the Member for Mount Druitt, and Charishma Kaliyanda, the Member for Liverpool, and Peter Gangemi, Mayor of Hills, all taking the time to come here. And I think this shows the level of support and the level of interest that happens here in this building and also throughout the community for the importance of the Australia and India relationship. Upon coming to Parliament and witnessing the very first minister to say his vows on the Bhagavad Gita, to see the first member of the Legislative Assembly put her vows on the Bhagavad Gita as well, that as well as what's happening in my own electorate, inspired me to start the Parliamentary Friends of India. And the Parliamentary Friends of India is a group that comes together of like-minded MPs who have a particular interest in what's happening in India at the moment, how the people of our electorates see the world, why they see the world in the way that they do, and the kinds of things that we can be doing as elected representatives of these communities to make sure that we both look after the wants and needs of a growing diaspora, but also make sure that we can work together to form some really fantastic community collaborations. And that's why I'm so keen to work with the India Club, because these are the core values of the India Club as well, is to bring social cohesion and advancement for all of our communities coming together. I recognise the desire to have more representation from people of Indian extraction, and while I don't deny the importance of this, one of the things that I say to all aspiring politicians of any background is it's important to always remember that we are here to represent the whole community, not any one sector of our community. It doesn't matter, from my end, I come out of a business background, and that business background was also involved in a lot of social support and being a photographer, the arts, obviously. So I understand these elements, and since putting my hand up to come into Parliament, I've been warmly welcomed by the South Asian diaspora more broadly, but in particular the Indian diaspora, who in my electorate represent a little bit over 25%. We have a very, very large number. And to talk about how quickly that shift has happened, if I used in my opening speech in Parliament an example of the suburb that I grew up in was Schofields, the postcode of that area was 2762. And right up until I reached working age, that population was about 2,500 people. By the 2011 census, that population in the same postcode had reached 3,500. By the 2016 census, it was about 5,500 people. By the 2021 census, it had jumped to 15,500 people. And the projection for 10 years from now is 150,000 people. Now, the vast majority of those people will be coming from South Asia. When I talk about around about 25% of people from India, it's not like you go up to every fourth door in our area and you're greeted by somebody from India. There are some suburbs that are, particularly the new suburbs that are coming in, that are in around 90-95% of people who come from somewhere within India. And I'm also acutely aware of, when I talk broad brush about India, I have around about 40% Gujaratis, I have somewhere around about 20% from Punjab, there's a lot of Malayalis, there's plenty of people from Kerala. So there is a very diverse mix within that brush of people coming from India. And that earlier this year inspired me to take a trip to India as my first international trip as an MP, to get an understanding of how do people from India see the world. Why do you think in a certain way? Why do you covet certain things? Why are some things important that maybe not the same as the way Australia sees the world? And that's everything from business through to how do people drive their cars. And I'll give you an example of the driving experience. If for anyone who's ever spent some time on the roads in India, you'll notice it's a little bit different to driving in Australia. Now, I spent most of my photographic career working in the car industry, working for car manufacturers. And if you ask an Australian driver, you know, what is important, you hear things like you have to obey the road rules. You have to make sure you understand vehicle dynamics. You need to understand how to operate a car and respect other drivers on the road. And after spending a couple of weeks in India, driving from one side of the continent of the country to the other, I asked my driver, what does it take to be a good driver in India? And he thought about it for a minute and he said, well, you need a good horn. And you need good brakes. And most of all, you just need good luck. And the horn thing is quite interesting. And for me, this is one of the symbols of how the different continents can see things quite differently, and how sometimes it can cause a little bit of angst within a community. For example, here in New South Wales, it's illegal to use your horn for anything other than an emergency situation. In India, not only do you use the horn for every situation, it's actually actively encouraged. On the back of every truck, horn please. When you're driving down the road, you see somebody wandering all over the place, which is quite common because of the proliferation of cows driving around. And so a gentle toot on the horn generally means, excuse me, I'm just going to come past you. Can you please make sure you don't drive over and tap me? And it can also mean, get out of my way, I'm in a rush. It is a language unto itself, and the difference between how it's done in India and then the driving styles here in Australia can cause a bit of division. And I see it as one of the things, one of my responsibilities, in fact, as a leader within the community, is to bring the two cultures together and to demystify where everybody else is coming from. One of the examples in my area, a new neighbour would move in, and it would be typical of you to pick up some sausages and a 6-pack of beer and say, hey, come over for a barbecue. If your new neighbours are Hindu, and I have the largest number of Hindus in New South Wales, probably not going to work for you. But then you end up with a bit of a divide between the two new neighbours, because the existing neighbour is like, well, I tried to reach out, but I got a knockback, and the new neighbour saying, oh, this guy offered me beef. So we can bridge that divide. We can come together and we can work together collaboratively to make these kind of things happen. And there are an enormous amounts of benefit in working with the Indian diaspora. The business acumen that's brought. If anybody has met anybody from Gujarat, you will know that they're always on the hustle. There is always an opportunity to make business, to generate business, to, if you have one restaurant, it's a stepping stone to your second or your third or your fourth or your fifth. If you are starting up a business in New South Wales, you're always looking at how you can connect that back to your friends, connections, colleagues, relationships that you have back in India. And we're often referred to as the lucky country here in Australia, and there's no question that we are. We have amazing beaches, amazing sunshine. There are enormous things that we benefit from as being Australian citizens, and one of those things that's regularly touted is the resources that we have available to us, the natural resources that are lying around. And there is no question that this is a huge benefit for the global economy. However, it is also somewhat of a limiting factor in that it has been commonplace in Australia for many, many years to export iron ore and buy back fridges or buy back cars. We have a limited amount of tertiary experience or tertiary industry experience. And India over the last few years, and again I go back to my experience in January, no matter where you turn, there is infrastructure being built. No matter where you turn, there is innovation. There's great strides forward. So we have a gap between primary industry, which we're very, very strong and we're reliant on, and we have extraordinary education and scientists, but we're missing something in the middle, and India provides the opportunity to bridge that gap and bring things together with that. And all of these opportunities have been around for a very, very long time, but nobody has quite known how to pull them together, how to stitch them together. And I think Dr. Andrew Charlton wrote this very concisely in his book, Pivot to India, where he identified the thing that has been missing is the diaspora. It is people who are on the ground, who have relationships back in India, who understand how the Indian economy works, how business in India works, and is able to then bridge the gap between their lives here in Australia, their vision for their family, the way that they want to see their future happening, and being able to collaborate with India to make that happen. One of the interesting things about trade with India, which seems to be quite different to the trade that Australia has with many other nations, is instead of just being a straight exchange between I have goods, you have money, it's about collaboration. It's about how can we work together to provide mutual benefit for both of our countries. And as an emerging economy, the Indian appetite to have this is very, very large. and so is the Australian appetite. And there is multiple opportunities for, in particular, the New South Wales government, but broadly the Australian economy, to make sure that that happens. And so I'm very excited by what the future holds, by how we can strengthen the relationships between the different people throughout India. While I readily recognise the differences between the different states, I'm a person who tries to look for commonalities rather than differences. And there are a number of commonalities that are universal throughout India. One is a sense of humour, one is a love of cricket, and one is a deep sense of Siva. And these three traits in particular are also synonymous with every Australian. And this is why I think that we can work really, really well together, and the future is essentially boundless between Australia and India. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren Kirby, member for Riverstone. That was very nice, great insights. We'd also like to welcome the member for Castle Hill. He's here with us. Could you stand up, Mark Hodges? He's here with us too. We also had the member for Blacktown, Stephen Bali. He popped in, was in here for a while. Oh, he's still there. Sorry, I couldn't see you. Stephen, would you like to stand up? You'd be proud after that lovely night. Ladies and gentlemen, he raised a lot of money he's raised almost 2.7, I think, $1 million for the Blacktown Hospital through his efforts. Imagine a game of cricket, 100,000 people in a stadium. Sachin Tendulkar's batting. He's got the hearts of 1.5 billion people. Imagine the umpire is Simon Taufel and the bowler is Brett Lee. And his stumps have been knocked off. That guy has to lift his finger. He needs to be, not the rude one, the good one. He needs to make sure he's taken the right decision. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Simon Taufel. He's an ICC cricket umpire, award-winning, 6-time, and he sits and does a lot of work with the ICC, and he's now in his second innings taking leadership sessions around the world. He goes around the world, he speaks on leadership, he is a champion when it comes to honesty, integrity, values in leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Simon Taufel.
I'd be very happy to see Sachin stumps all over the place, because then I don't need to make a decision. That's what we pray for. Brian Lara, Ricky Ponting, stumps all over the place. Distinguished guests, thank you for having me here today. I've got about 2 overs time to speak to you about a couple of key topics, maybe a bit longer if Shoaib Akhtar and Sri Santh are off their long run-ups. But whenever I talk to a group of people like this, members of the audience sit there and they say, what can I learn from a cricket umpire? Why have I got a cricket umpire in the room here? Hopefully by the end of this very short presentation, you might be able to take back just a couple of things to change behaviour around how you view India, how you view Australia, and how you view the partnership. So for me, it's always an important topic. I love India. It's probably got the most number of visa stamps in my passport. It's a country that has embraced me, despite the first time I turned up there to do a series, nobody picked me up from the airport. So after that auspicious start, my love affair with India began. But I'm going to make some generalisations in the following short period of time. It's really important for me. I always believe there's an exception to every rule. And so there's an exception to every generalisation. So please don't take me literally, but I do believe in the 80-20 rule. I believe in the power of 3. And I also believe that unless we do things differently, things are going to stay the same. I'm going to show you a few pictures about why India is special to me, and understand the context and the lens that I'm going to present a couple of observations for you to think about. India is a very dynamic place. Hot, cold, quiet, noisy, challenging, easy, dynamic, eclectic, colourful. It's all of those things. It's very much like Australia in terms of the breadth and width and differences in that respect, but it's on a different scale. You know, not just population-wise, but just the numbers. The pure size of the challenge is incredibly immense, but so is the opportunity. That word's been used a couple of times here. Bottom left, you can see that I had a very ordinary attempt at Movember with Narendra Modi when I met him in Sydney a few years ago. But I think I'm well liked in India because the team has been pretty successful under my umpiring. Although I've gotten Sachin Tendulkar wrong a few times and I've upset a few people accordingly, they have won a few World Cups under my officiating. And that's probably not a bad thing. But just like that photo at the bottom right-hand side, and no, that's not the Wiggles, it's a 2011 Cricket World Cup group of match officials with a few support staff at the Taj Mahal. India is about culture. And Warren, I'm really pleased to hear that you've actually gone to India to embrace some of the culture, to experience that for yourself and understand how people think and why they think the way that they do. It's a very special place. And I don't think that you could ever walk away from India thinking that you actually know it. It's incredibly dynamic. Why I would like to probably give you some key messages around, well, what does the India relationship look like? I think you need to understand when my first experience as training and education took place in India at the top left, and I was training BCCI umpires on behalf of Cricket Australia under a 3-year agreement. Imagine you turn up to a training class or a training group and they're all dressed in their umpiring uniform, their match day uniform. They're dressed in classroom kit. And you sit up the front of the table on an elevated pedestal and you present stuff to them. No engagement, it's a lecture. That's how we started. And it's not just about transferring information, but it's about transferring trust. Why should they listen to you? What have you got to tell them that they could learn from? We transfer that back to today on the bottom left, and I do simulation classes with these umpires and referees today. You engage with them one-on-one. That's not just breaking down the training process to a more effective way of doing things, but it's actually showing a connection of mutual trust and respect between you coming from Australia, and I have to talk very slowly when I go to India, and them. And to the point you become us, where they don't feel threatened by you. I will say at this juncture that the two ways that people get out of poverty in India, one is through education and the other one's through sport. When we marry the two together, we've got something very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. So I've been invited to probably over 12 IITs or universities in India on behalf of student bodies to present thoughts, concepts around how to get to the top, how to stay there. How do you go about your craft to go from somewhere to the top? And more particularly, stay there for a while. That takes a lot of courage for people in India to come to terms with those themes, because remember, the cultural experience is you do what mum and dad tell you, and you do a course for a status symbol. Normally it's engineering, or it's medicine, or law. There's not much outside of that. And so when I turn up and I speak to those people and I present this concept of do what you love and love what you do, and get them to really question why they're doing the courses that they're doing, that's a pretty significant moment. It's a very significant moment for them to realise, to say, hey, I do have the power of choice. And in today's India, the shift has been is that there are more and more young people coming through who have got that courage to say to mum and dad, you know what, I want to do the arts. I want to do something different. I want to go into the service industry. I want to explore my creative talents. I think that India has shifted massively over the last 20 years since I've seen it, to go from yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, to you know what, I've got power of choice, I've been empowered, I've got a responsibility to live my life the way I would like to. In my training and education of whether it's umpires, whether it's students, India traditionally has been exceptionally good around the hard skills, around the mathematics, the sciences, the engineering, the statistics. They've been tremendously good about the hard skills. Where I think Australia can collaborate a lot more is around the soft skills, the people management, the leadership, the integrity side of things, and more particularly the teamwork problem solving. And understand that success comes through really good teamwork and cross-pollination. That's where I think the complementary skills really do sell themselves and provide mutual benefit to both Australia and India in all sorts of different ways. Different sectors, different organisations and different pursuits. A couple of things we're really proud of from a cricketing lens. I've worked really hard obviously with the BCCI I started my umpiring career at the MCG with Venkat as my first test umpire partner. Venkat was not a team player. He was a very, for those of you who, you probably don't know umpiring, but Venkat was not a team player. He didn't believe in changing his shirt after 3 or 4 days either, but an incredibly wise and tough and strong individual. He was India's last test umpire before the guy on the left, Sundaram Ravi, 10 years later. It's a hard road to ply in India to move ahead and move forward. Massive competition, massive ego, and massive, what would I say? Probably massive, I wrote the word down here before, massive arrogance. Massive arrogance. When you become very strong in what you do, there is the potential for people to get very arrogant about the way they go about their craft. And it's really important that you recognise that as being the barrier to progress. Arrogance and ego is the enemy for progress. So whenever you see that, and it does come out in Australians and Indians quite a lot from time to time, need to flip that on its head and work on humility. So we worked very hard to produce a new test umpire, and the guy at the bottom left, Nitin Menon, is now India's current test umpire. And why I show you that IPL photograph from this IPL now is because when I started doing IPLs in 2008 and finals in 2008, it was an all international panel, all overseas, because there was a lack of trust in the talent within India to officiate their own. You look at that panel there now who did the final, and only Michael Goss, who's the tallest one there, is an overseas umpire. We've now got India officiating, being trusted and respected to the point where they can now do their own domestic final of a tournament like that. That's quite significant. I've got Sachin Tendulkar in the middle there. Now, I've really cut him off a couple of times in scoring 100. We won't talk about that too much in this room. But I wrote a book a few years ago, and I rang Sachin up and I said, Sachin, would you mind writing the foreword for that book? He said, sure. How long have I got? I said, well, a couple of weeks would be nice. And he did it. One of the greatest things you can walk away from any venture, any career path at all is the respect of the people that you work with. And to be able to work with Sachin, Virender Sehwag, Yuvraj Singh, Virat Kohli on the right, who has done some work for the Bradman Foundation as well, is significant. So it's not about World Cup finals. It's not about the number of matches you do. It's having the respect and relationship with the people such as that, that I hold dear to my heart. So where do we go to from here? I think it's incumbent upon everybody in the room to be the change that you want to see, that you have the power of choice, that you can make a connection with someone else in this room or someone from India or Australia, that you can actually start to cross-pollinate and collaborate with and say, how can we work together to deliver something better? So after every one of my sessions, there's always a call to action. So the call to action for you to think about as you walk out the door later on today is, what do I do next? So today's been a really interesting, great chat event around building better relationships between our two countries. But I really want you to think about how you can leverage off sport, how you can leverage off education, hopefully put the two together and come up with something even better, and make the world a better place. So thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for those wonderful words. Now, if you look at this slide, you know, what we're wondering is, can the kangaroo tame the tiger? Can the emu befriend the peacock? And that is the question that we're talking of. Very often, India is referred to as a big elephant. And if you saw one of the slides that Professor Tim Harcourt had put together, I did see a little bit of a cartoonized elephant in there. And taming that elephant is what we as Australians have been trying to do over the last several decades. This is the time. There's no better time than now, when there are 1.4 billion people in a democracy with an average age. And that's the thing. Let me give you some statistics to just put things into perspective. So the size of India is 3.2 million square kilometers. The size of Australia is 7.74 million square kilometers. So India's almost half the size. Let's talk population. The population of Australia is approximately 26 million. The population of India is 1.425 billion, so 7 times the population. Let's look at it from another perspective. Let's look at it from the point of view, obviously they're both common democracies. One is a parliamentary democracy under constitutional monarchy, that is Australia, where we live, and the federal parliamentary system, where India is a republic. But look at the inhabitants. Now, in terms of population density, we in Australia have 3.4 people per square kilometer. Any guesses with India? 433.7 people per square kilometer. That's what it works out to. The life expectancy of males is 81 years in Australia and 66 years in India. With females, it's 85 years in Australia, 69 years in India. Now, here's another interesting statistics. The average age of our population, we in Australia have an aging population, and that population is close to 40. The population, the 1.42 billion people in India and growing, are under the age of 30. The 29 years, the average, that's the average. So it's a country with people having enterprise, with, as Warren said, the idea to serve or savor, as we all in some way, form or shape have spoken about, because everyone wants good karma and they want to do good things, because if you do good, good will happen to you. That's what most Indians believe. And it doesn't matter whether you're Hindu, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're Baha'i. That's the beauty. This population in India is so multicultural, and it's wonderful to see that Muslim boy with a Hindu having fun together, or that Christian with a Buddhist, or that Jain. And there's so many religions, and I can assure you that some of those religions you wouldn't even know. But that's the beauty of India. There's a very fine community called the Parsis, amazing community, and what they bring to India in terms of flavor, in terms of just being such beautiful people with a Persian background, is just amazing. So that's what India is. It's enchanting. The traffic he's spoken about, Warren has. Obviously Simon has put in his twist, and so has Professor Tim Harcourt. We could go on talking about it, but one thing that each one of us need to realize is cultural sensitization. We must know, we must understand. If you want to work in that space, you need to understand that culture. You need to appreciate their culture, their customs, and of course their taboos, and try and fit yourself within that and understand that if they are late, it's a normal thing. But you still can do business. They are lovely. If they invite you over to their home, it doesn't mean that they want, they want you to enter into their personal domain. It's because they care for you. So these are the few little nuances that you would probably see. Without further ado, let's go into a Q&A. And what we do is first start with, from the other side, with Simon. Simon, I'd like you to ask one of the other panelists a question that you think you'd like to ask. That gives enough time for Warren, while we get to Warren, to be able to ask a question to the other.
I won't use a microphone.
I'll give you a microphone. No, we need
That's okay.
No, we need a microphone for the crowd. Sorry. It could be to anyone.
Well, you asked me to ask Warren. Warren, when's your next trip to India?
January. January. I'm doing the south of India. So the first trip was started in Gujarat. We flew over to Delhi. We drove from Delhi to Agra, Orcha, Gwalior, Khajuraho, then Varanasi, then flew into Mumbai and out. So we did that kind of middle section. And then in January, I'm going Kerala across to Chennai.
Good answer.
Simon, probably you don't know, but he played a game of cricket in India. Do you want to ask him what he scored and whether he bowled, batted or cheated?
No, I want to ask him what the umpiring was like.
Well, this was the game of cricket I imposed myself upon. I noticed that you're driving around in India, everywhere is a cricket pitch. It doesn't matter whether it's a car park, middle of the street, off to the side of the road. And we were driving along and we were on the side of a freeway and there was a rail line, and in between the rail line and the road, a cricket game had started. So I was like, stop! Jumped out, grabbed the bat. I did get a boundary, no umpiring.
So it wasn't a John Howard moment?
No, well, I mean, there was a John Howard moment shortly after that, but there was a boundary involved, and then I got cleaned up by one of the serious bowlers that came in.
No, it's great. I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, you drive anywhere in India and you will see a game of cricket. You see a spare space of car park, there's a game of cricket. No grass, but yeah. Tim?
Can I just pick up on the cricket stuff? My first day in Mumbai, I went on a delegation with a previous New South Wales Premier, Bob Carr. I don't know how many of you remember Bob Carr, but he doesn't like sport. So I got all his cricket tickets. So my first day in Mumbai, I saw Tendulkar make 50 on that wicket that lasted 2 days. Michael Clarke got 6 for 9. So 50 was like making 300. And I remember walking from my hotel in Mumbai to the cricket ground. Every Indian stopped me and asked me where I was from. I said South Australia, and they told me the South Australian Sheffield Shield scores from 1966-67. Their knowledge was so great. And in the afternoon, I interviewed Miss Universe, Arasha Rao. So that was my first day in India. I thought it was pretty good. And I was really struck. I think before COVID, I went to India about 4 times a year. I was really struck with Simon's presentation about respect for each other. I remember when Australians used to go to India, the cricketers, there were always terrible stories in the media. But the new generation of Australians love India, whether they be players or umpires or so on. I've got a good friend who, Patrick Farhad, who was physio to the Indian cricket team and the Australian cricket team in the Delhi Capitals. And he told me that Virat Kohli loves Australia. And he said, just as Australians didn't respect India before, but now they do, he said the old-style Indian cricket team used to treat people in hotels terribly, and the drivers very snobby. And Kohli said, we're going to be like Australians. We're going to treat everyone in the hotel as equals. And he said the whole culture of the Indian cricket team really lifted under Kohli, that he'd done a great job in terms of how you treat people. So I thought Simon's talk on respect for each other really took a note.
It's a good story. The other interesting fact too is that you haven't mentioned MS Dhoni has got more pairs of R.M. Williams boots than there would be in this room today. So yeah, absolutely.
Interesting piece of trivia, Simon. Thanks for that.
But IPL has done a lot to actually bring every country in that respect together, but particularly the Australian-India relationship, IPL-wise. They really are revered in that part of the world, and they're seen as champions, but we've also sent some coaches there that haven't worked particularly well. So Greg Chappell didn't really have a good run with the Indian cricket team for lots of different reasons, to be honest, and I think we need to learn from that, that you cannot, it's a bit like understanding the Indian culture. You cannot change the Indian culture and make it into the Australian culture with a cricket team or any team. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It took a Gary Kirsten and a Paddy Upton to realise that you need to move away from the Kumble clique and the Ganguly clique, and you need to find some common ground. And one of the things that brings India together is their national team, their national cricket team. And once you harness that, they are world beaters. And they should be world beaters with such a big pool to select from, shouldn't they?
And you know, one of the wonderful things I might add is that over the years, and more so in recent times, what a beautiful relationship these two countries share. I was fortunate to be part of a delegation that went to India. There were 350 delegates, and I was a part of the Innovation and Technology group. And I had all the vice chancellors from universities around Australia, and the guys from all the scientists with me, and a couple of senators. And what we found was the question that in closed doors that I still remember the Federal Minister Andrew Robb asked me over breakfast is, how do we break the ice? We go into this room, these guys are so cold, your Indian counterpart. How do we break this ice? And there is a knack of doing that. You've got to break that barrier and you've got to understand that culture. I did it for a couple of meetings and they saw it. And lo and behold, we signed our first a major agreement, which was worth about, from memory, about $7 or $8 million with not a large amount, but just a good breaking point with one of the large companies, Larsen & Toubro in Foodtech. And this only goes to show that, there's talent across both sides of the border, but how do we break that ice? Yes, we need to, and we need to start working with each other in various areas. And there's so much opportunity in every area because the average Indian is an entrepreneur. He wants to, he sees the numbers and it's about survival of the fittest. So he wants to survive. He wants to educate his children. He wants the best for his children. If he had his go, he wants his child, to be successful till his last days in this world. That's the love that they have. And so if you can understand these little things, I think there's heaps of business that can be done across the borders. Over to you.
It's interesting on entrepreneurship. When I had my first trip to India, Bob Carr was late at another meeting and the High Commissioner said, can you meet this gentleman and just sort of keep him company while we wait for the official party? So I sat down with this chap and I said, Tim Harcourt from Australia, g'day, how are you? And what do you do? And he said, I have a little computer company. I grew up in a poor family and then I married a nice woman and set up a little computer company. And I said, good on you, that sounds good. It turns out he was the head of Infosys, a little computer company. And then in came Carr and the High Commissioner, Mr. Moody, I'm going, how are you? But he was because I wasn't starstruck, he quite enjoyed it. And he was very humble and engaging.
And I think one of the ways, Simon is probably well aware of it and probably Tim too, but for those of you who haven't interacted, one of the best ways is if you really want to do business with or work with someone across the globe, don't look at them from a perspective of them being a superstar. I've been very fortunate to be friends with and having done some form of either organized stuff for them, whether it's for charity or for business across the borders. And one of the things that we tend to get carried away is this modern age of selfies, taking photos, and it distracts people because you don't know what you're going to do. You don't end up conversing and you're more worried about getting a good picture for social media, which is what the teenagers today, cause themselves a lot of anxiety. There's bullying around that space. So one of my suggestions would be if you keep those cameras away and you focus on actually building that physical relationship. When I say physical, I mean in person. You need to be across each other, shake hands, talk to each other. Don't feel bad if that Indian hugs you. Don't feel bad if it's a part of the culture. And it doesn't mean that they're in love with you. It just means that they accept you and would like to take that relationship to the next level. you would sometimes see people touching feet of seniors or elders or a very established, renowned person. I think that's a mark of respect. And it doesn't mean that anyone is subservient. It doesn't mean that that person is is a living legend like Simon Taufel. It means, it means that, come on, Simon. It's payback time. I've got the microphone. But no, it's about understanding, cultures, and it's about understanding people. I'll also very briefly touch upon, in the 70s, the Australian cricket team, in the 80s, late 80s, 89, 88, 89, around that time, the Australian cricket team came to India. I happened to be working I was at the St. James Court Hotel in London. I got a call from the chef from one of the hotels in India and said, Rajiv, there's a question for you. These cricketers want baked beans. What the hell is how do I cook baked beans? So I said, you don't cook them, you just go and buy them. He said, oh, no, but we don't do outside stuff. So, this is the kind of things. I do remember lots of cricketers used to bring their own food and their own water and their own coffee and drinks. I can understand coffee and drinks because you can be pretty fussy about what coffee you drink. But that was the India in the 70s and the 80s. And today, the Brett Lees, the Liesl Stallikers, the Simon Taufels, they're really respected. The Steve Vaughs, the Alan Borders, they're all respected across, and they're respected, really, really respected, and that's the beauty of that they acknowledge, they actually see what you are. But whereas here you could find Steve Vaugh walking or signing books outside Dimmock's, and, I've had young people go up to him and say, so what do you do? And he looks at them and says, I'm a cricketer. And, you can see that frustration and this thing. That's my book. Oh, really? You've written a book? You're a book writer? No, cricketer. Oh, okay. So I'm just giving you an analogy. Whereas the same Steve Vaugh, he wouldn't be able to walk down the streets because someone with a transistor or a radio or a mobile phone will say, hey, that's Steve. Steve, can I have a photo with you, please? Hey, Steve, tell us about this. Tell us about that. They know, they're following them on social media, so they know what's happening. That's the India of today.
I just want to pick up on the point of the selfie. The selfie is the modern version of collecting autographs.
Yeah, true.
I started my career as a newspaper photographer and would see people go up, shove books in front of people's faces, and there was no engagement whatsoever. There was never a connection between the person and the autograph giver. Whereas if then you see somebody else who comes up and says, "Hi, how you going?" It's a completely different interaction. So I'm on board with that. But I want to fire back to Simon a bit of a question.
There you go, Simon, you're in trouble.
I've been quite keen to ask this question of someone in your position who can answer with some kind of authority.
No doubt.
Fair warning for everybody in the room, this is going to be a little bit controversial because we're going to talk about the World Cup.
Umpires don't care who wins.
No, not at all. But I'd be interested to know your observations on mental fitness and mental preparedness for a game like that. I was fortunate enough to be in a chat with a bunch of Indian friends of mine from Tallawong who were overjoyed in the first innings. And if you had a look on paper, by all rights, India should have walked away with that game. But it very clearly became a game of the mind, far more so than the body. And what's your observations of that?
India were exposed because they were successful for a large part of that tournament. There was an expectation, a complacency that things would continue, and that a lot of their lower order weren't exposed to actually having to graft and fight and bat and actually win a game, where Australia had to go through that tournament having to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat a number of times. Glenn Maxwell, Paddy Cummins, those sorts of things. But to your point now, moving forward, I'm really concerned about that mental fatigue of a very, very long IPL tournament of 2 months, now going into a World Cup on a different side of the world, and then that cricketing fatigue, that performance fatigue. Have they had a decent break where those players can switch off and actually recharge, reflect, renew? I think India's going to struggle mentally. Personally, I think a lot of the players who go from 2 months of cricket there to another month in the US of having to be away from home, be away from a break, being able to mentally recharge, I think they're going to do it tough.
Sorry.
I've long agreed with the idea of knowing is the greatest inhibitor to learning. You know something, you're not open to learning anymore.
Yeah, and so humility is a great part of what we do. And as a cricket umpire, we're one ball away from disaster. We make a mistake, we have to stay out there. If a player makes a mistake, a batsman makes a mistake, they get to go and, sulk in the dressing room and hide away from the rest of the world. So it's a different scenario when you actually have to then remain in that environment and be on public show. So I think that while this World Cup is great, there's just far too much cricket for people to now, spectators included, where you just want to, I just want a break. I'm really looking forward to State of Origin tonight and not just talking about cricket. I just want to see a really good game of rugby league and a great sporting event. And I think that we need to make sure that we don't do too much work. So there's a danger here of doing too much cricket. There's a danger here of doing too much work and not actually working on the soul and the heart and the physical, mental fitness.
And I'm just going to take over here. Professor Harcourt, somebody told me recently to become a incredibly successful Australian business operating in India, you need less than 0.8% penetration into the market. As an economist, what is your response to that?
Reminds me of people used to say you just got to sell a pair of socks to China because there's 1 billion people, you'll make lots of money off socks. I think there's more to it than that because I think it's comparative advantage, the rate of competition, the point you made before about where the sweet spot is in terms of innovation, manufacturing. Australia's very good at rocks and crops, very good services. India's got some complementarities. And also I think your point about education was important in terms of, 50% of the country under 25. There's not enough tertiary institutions in India to give everyone a place. And so that's why there's opportunity for Australia in terms of education. And I really like Simon's point about the way to get out of poverty in India is sport and education. At UTS, we have a Centre for Sport, Business and Society, which does exactly that. And we have a lot of Indian students who want to be not just cricketers, but they want to be working in logistics, in sport, in marketing. And we have a Centre for Sports Performance that brings out women fast bowlers to get them up to 130k per hour. So, I joke about how we call the conference Cricket Collaboration and Commonwealth to get more profile in India, but actually at UTS now it's an important part of our education, sport, and I think the engagement with India is going to be really big as a result.
And these days mums and dads want their kids to grow up to play IPL. They don't want to play for India, they want to play for a franchise. That's the way the world has gone now. We want to play for a franchise, we don't want to play for our country. We want to play for a franchise because that's where the money is. So money talks.
And talking of money, talking of cricket rather, Tim's son also plays cricket. Tim, tell us a little bit about your son. What does he play for? Who does he play for?
So my son is adopted from Taiwan. So he's Taiwanese Indigenous, which the Indigenous people of Taiwan. And he's also had a bar mitzvah. So there's not many Taiwanese Indigenous Jewish kids around. And he's a left-arm fast bowler in the Eastern Suburbs Under-13 competition, and he's known as the Taiwan Typhoon. Ooh. And he's every cricketer that I wasn't. I was a very Jeff Boycott sort of batsman, wicketkeeper. He bowls quick, he bowls swing both ways, like Wazam Akram, and he does ramp shots like Glenn Maxwell. So he's a really entertaining cricketer, and he won the medal for the comp last year, and I took him to a cricket coaching academy with the famous Australian Doug Walters, and I said to Doug, how did he go? And he said, he's the best Taiwanese cricketer he's ever seen. So from a random sample one, I thought that was pretty good. But I did look up the Taiwan Cricket League, and there is a Taiwanese cricket league run mainly by Indians who work in the ICT industry. So I've now made a connection through the Indian community in Taiwan.
Fantastic. I'm going to put Mayor Gangemi on the spot, the mayor for the Hills Shire. Would you like to ask a question to the panel? I'm just going to bring a microphone to you.
And Warren, thank you for organising today, but my question is more directed towards the Professor and to Simon, I guess. Like Warren's electorate, it's more because I'm asking for advice in terms of, I guess, government, from a government perspective, and I guess we're government in a way, but our council area, like Warren's electorate, more people are born in India than, more of our residents are born in India than any other country apart from Australia. So we've got a very high proportion of people born in India. What's your advice in terms of to local governments or to state or federal governments in terms of engaging our community better, or maybe providing for residents from this part of the world a little bit better? What are you seeing that government's not doing from a local, state or federal level, but we should be doing?
Simon.
Oh, you need to take that first.
It's a bouncer.
That's okay. One of the great things within the Indian community that I love is the respect of the family unit and the hierarchical relationship that exists. And as I said before, that dynamic is shifting. But I think when you talk to the community, you need to talk to every generation within that community and also pitch the message slightly differently. I think that's important, because the one message won't necessarily connect with mum and dad as it will with, son and daughter. So I think just maybe shift the language here a little bit, and also try not to talk down to when you message or when you're providing communication. Try not to talk down to people of that background, and leverage off the values of respect and honesty, and the fact that we are now in Australia. And talk to them as Australians. I think that's part of what I think. They've come here to this country for opportunity and for a new start and to embrace everything that Australia offers them. So treat them accordingly. Treat them as Australians. That's my response.
I agree wholeheartedly with that and what Warren said before. We can come from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Transylvania, like my ancestors. We've all come, we've been here for 50,000 years or 50 years or 5 years. We're all Australian. And India has great culture and great tradition, but Indians make great Australian citizens. And so my view is the last thing we want in our parliament and in our civic institutions is that someone is an Indian candidate and someone is a Pakistan candidate and someone is an Afghanistan candidate. We don't want that. We're all Australian candidates. We're all a reflection of the community from whatever we're from. And so I think that's the best advice you can give in corporate life, and people will get behind you.
Right, we'll take two last very quick questions. Anyone from the audience wants to ask a question? Put your hands up if you do want to. Anybody there?
Thank you for those enlightening, experiences that you shared with us. For better relationships, I believe that cultural empathy is very important, and I really commend people like Warren and others who have been trying to actively build that, understand that cultural empathy. What would you say would be, on a scale of 1 to 10, the cultural understanding or empathy of an average Australian vis-a-vis India? And what can be done to improve that, especially people from the Indian diaspora? What else can we do to help in that regard?
Who's going to take that?
Great question. Really good question.
Quite a broad question.
No, that's a really good question.
To Simon.
Did you want me to start, because you've got to get this? So I go back to the point that I was making earlier about the cultural disconnect, and I'll talk quite specifically from the Riverstone electorate and the experience that I've had through my lifetime. And I'll also preface it with a point that was made to me by a leading sheikh in the area. He made the point that we don't have the same kind of deep-rooted cultural concerns that you see in many other countries. One of the reasons that he attributes to our great multicultural society is that unless you can trace your ancestry back more than 236 years on this continent, we are all immigrants. So that is a great starting point. But I will say that we did, right up until the 1970s, have a White Australia policy, which was an encumbrance. Now, in my community, we had an overtly Anglo community for about 150 years, and that's shifting very quickly. And I have to wrap this up because I do need to get into the chamber at the sound of those bells. But basically, the point is, be open to the differences between the two countries. Don't attribute malice or any kind of your own legacy onto somebody's actions. It's quite likely that you have actually misinterpreted their motivations for something. Ask them before you suddenly make assumptions on what they've done and why they've done it.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Warren Kirby as he leaves. Thank you, Warren. He's got to go back into Parliament.
My take on this would be it's all about assimilation, and I think it's really important that we don't label society too much. Little India, for example, is a plus, but for me it's also a minus, that we shouldn't necessarily be identifying one particular suburb or area as Little India, because we are in Australia, and I'd love to see more people come to this country and assimilate as Australians and bring the tremendous cultural benefit with them, but be Australian, make Australia better as a result of that. So I think the relationships that Indian migrants will make with Australians currently here, and part of what we're doing today is to take that message forward and say we need to talk more, we need to mix more, we need to work together more, and break down some of those beliefs or barriers that might exist, and actually just realise that we are just good people.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. My kids' cricket team has 3 Indians, a West Indian, a Taiwanese. All the kids barrack for Australia in the cricket, even the ones whose parents are Indian, and they laugh about it. And those 2 people I showed in my slide, they're not only great Indian migrants to Australia, they're both Australia Day ambassadors. Again, participation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're pressed for time. There's another group that's going to come in here at 6, and it should be only good to vacate and give them some time to reset. Sorry, but we're going to have to come to an end. Thank you very, very much to each one of you for coming today. We will be preparing a white paper and submitting it to Warren Kirby, who will be giving it to the Premier Chris Minns. And we hope and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, on behalf of the Community Foundation of Northwestern Sydney, on behalf of the India Club, and on behalf of the Indo-Australian Sanatan Society, I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Good day.